Hi there. We're going to walk through the business unit number 2 homework assignment from the My IT Lab system, and specifically in this video we're going to take a look at step number 9. So I have the instructions for step 9 open on the right hand side of the screen, and what we're going to do is we're going to build an if statement, and that if statement is going to return the word yes if the product line ranking, which is here in column H, is A or B. So this is a neat little activity. We're building an if statement, and embedded within that if statement, we're going to use the OR function. Ignore this little error message. You won't get it. It's my little laptop has its own problems. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're doing a regular if, an if function. Our if function follows the same rules as every other function. Rule number 1, we start out with the equal sign. Rule number 2, we use the function name. So I'm going to start with the I, and because it pops up on my list here, I can double click it to have Excel pop it in for me. Rule number 3, we have to have the input parts of the function surrounded by parentheses. So I have a left-hand parentheses, and that's always matched by a right-hand parentheses. Those are our rules for writing a function. Okay, so now we have to stop and think, well, how do we write an if function? I give if functions to my kids all the time, right? I say, if you do your homework, then you get a cookie. So the first thing that happens in an if function is the test. For my kids, the test is, did they do the homework? If they did their homework, then they get the cookie. No, the homework's not done, then no cookie. So here our test is if, so what would that be? If H5 equals A or B. So because this is an OR, we need to embed the OR function. So I'm going to start by, and that comes right away. So I'm going to start typing O. It doesn't pull up very high on the list. So I'm going to type OR. There it is. Okay, I'm going to double click to select that one. And for our OR statement, and OR is just looking for tests. So we want our first test as H5 equal. And then we have to remember that anytime we're using text, it goes in the quotation marks. Numbers don't have to worry about it. Excel gets the numbers. But text has to go in these quotes as if it doesn't understand text. So we put it in quotes. It just regurgitates that text for us. Okay, does H5 equal A? That's one test. The second test is, does H5 equal B? And you'll remember from our previous functions that we have to separate the parts of the function by a comma. So I'm going to type in a comma, and then I'm going to do that same thing all over again. H5 equal, and this time I'm going to say B. Does H5 equal B? And that's it. That's our OR statement. Is it A or B? So my OR function is done. That means I have to wrap up the parentheses. Remember, that's a rule for writing functions. All of the input values to the function have to be surrounded by parentheses. So my OR function is done, but my if function is not. The only part that I've entered for my if function is the test, right? Is the homework done? Or in this case, is it A or B? That's all that's done. So now I have to tell Excel what happens when that test is true. Okay, that means it's another input value, so I have to type a comma. All right. Okay. So now we have to say, well, what happens if this test is true? If the test is true, we want Excel to return a value of yes. Oh, okay. And I'll remember that because it's text, it goes in quotes. It goes in the double quotes. So I'll do yes, surrounded by quotes, then another comma. Here's the last input to this function. What happens if the test is false? Well, if I think about for my kids, if the homework's not done, then no cookie. The same thing's true here. If it's false, then we get an answer of no. So again, I put that text in quotation marks, and those are the 3 parts to an if statement. First, we have the test, then we have what happens if it's true, then we have what happens if it's false. So I'm ready for my parentheses, my ending parentheses for the if statement. I'm going to press enter, fingers crossed. It worked. Fill it on down the column, and then just keep an eye on it. Make sure it kind of makes sense. Letter C is a no, letter D is a no, letter A is a yes. Okay, it looks good to me. That's when you know it's good to save your work, and then I'll make another video for the next step.